Today at Pull Start Stables, we're putting this clutch kit from Rock Auto in a turbo diesel Jetta. Now this is a 2011, and it's been a while since I've worked on a Volkswagen and had a transmission out, but I'm sure I'm going to need access to those top bell housing bolts. So we're just going to get started while we're on top, pull the intake, pull the battery loose, and get those top bell housing bolts taken out. The air filter box, the battery and battery box have been removed. The power and ground and trigger wires for the starter have been removed, and I might want to note that there's nothing holding that cable on. I might end up just drilling a hole through that and putting a clip in place when I put it back together. The point of doing this job today is that we are going through a lot of brake fluid on the clutch system. So since the slave cylinder is compromised, we just chose to do a teardown and replace the clutch while we're at it. I have the engine blocked up and supported. I have this top mount taken loose. I have any and all 18mm socket bell housing bolts taken loose that I can reach from the top. The top starter bolt is loose. The clutch slave cylinder is disconnected. And I believe it's time to lift this car up and get underneath it. Underneath the car, I used a 16mm socket and broke loose the nuts for the lower ball joints and was able to just pull down on this lower control arm enough to separate the ball joint from the control arm. And then I pulled the CV shaft away from the transmission. On this side, I popped out the lower ball joint the same way. I took the bolt out of the end of the CV shaft and also removed that one. A coworker of mine once told me that once you hit 30, you can never trust a fart. So with that in mind, I used my engine hoist underneath the engine to lift it up off of this lower mount. And I've got my transmission jack here underneath the transmission. I've got one more bolt that's hidden here, and the transmission is loose from the engine. So now that that bolt is out, with any luck, I should be able to separate the engine from the transmission and lower it down without having to change my shorts. So what I'm fighting is the fact that this transmission case is touching underneath the car here on the unibody frame rail, and is also touching here on the front side of this lower control arm mount. I have plenty of times picked it up, twirled it around, done tricks, and pulled transmissions out of Volkswagen Jettas plenty of times. I'm also to the point where I can move it around. It's not a big deal. But I'm still kind of stuck. Maybe I'll be able to bring the engine down a little bit further to be able to get where I need to. kind of as a job that brings me back to my ute. Get out of my barn, chickens! Get! Get! I cannot actually see this being the right way to do this job. Clearly doing something wrong. You know, it smarts that one would cut himself throwing his gloves away. We're getting frogs and zebras and monkeys today. It's a pretty good one. It's a pretty good cut. That's probably not how you're supposed to put Band-Aids on. Okay, all better. I'm thinking this clutch has been getting slightly worn for a little bit amount of time. We have some oven cleaner being used as a heavy degreaser currently. I will let that soak for a few minutes, and then I will spray it off with some degreaser, and then finally wipe it out. Yeah, the pressure plate kind of blew apart, and what's rubbing is kind of crazy. Apparently this is called a dual mass flywheel, and the flywheel itself is what's rubbing. This inside piece is loose. I know it's hard to see, but you can probably see right there. I can shake this whole surface just by my hand. It's coming apart from the flywheel.